Hello, search team. My name is Jeremy Penn, and welcome to my home in Mesa, Arizona. Ryan sent me about 10 questions to answer for you and to post online so you guys could review them and get back with me about the position at South Biscayne Church. So we're going to jump right in and get through these questions pretty briefly. So the first question is this: what kind of church would you prefer to serve in? Now, the first thing I look for is a church that's evangelical. I'm an evangelical Christian, pretty conservative theologically, so I want my doctrine and the church's doctrine to line up as closely as possible. I also want a church that is involved in mission, a church that is seeking the lost and sharing the gospel with them, a church that is feeding the hungry, taking care of the poor, providing shelter for the homeless, a church that is really involved in mission activity, both local and abroad. I also want to be in a church that has a vision, a church that is moving towards something as opposed to remaining stagnant or moving away from something. I also want to be involved in a church that is concerned about both evangelism and discipleship. I want a church that reaches the lost, and then once that person receives Christ, a church that invests in them and develops them so that they can become more and more Christ-like. And finally, the churches that I'm looking at have a pretty strong family ministry, an idea that people are important from birth until death, that we invest in the entire family, no matter where a person is at in their life spectrum. And I have a family. I'm concerned about it. I have kids, and believe it or not, they come with me. I want them to have a church family that cares about them as children, and then later on as elementary students, and then as teenagers and college students, and so on. So I'm looking for those kinds of things in a church. Those are the kinds of churches that I want to be involved with. The next question is: do you function well in a team environment where the staff helps each other out for the betterment of the overall vision of the church? The answer is yes. The first two churches I worked at in Huntington Beach, California, and then in Clinton, Iowa, were a multi-staff team, and I worked well in that setting. Both those churches, the pastors all got together and bounced ideas off each other. They brainstormed together. They also filled in for each other when someone was on vacation or ill or other circumstances. And in that team environment, the ministry thrived, and I also thrived. I'm not a Lone Ranger. I don't want to be a Lone Ranger. I want to be involved in a team ministry. That's where I work best and where I thrive. The next question is: how long do you sense a calling to serve in your primary area of ministry? My wife and I were discussing this morning, actually, and we were talking that we feel called pretty comfortable with 8 to 10 years in student ministry. The reason for that is because my daughter's 4, and in 8 to 10 years she'll be involved in student ministry. She'll be a student, and I guarantee you she does not want me to be her youth pastor. And so we're looking at 8 to 10 year time frame. If God calls us longer, of course we'll keep doing that. But right now, that's where my wife and I are sensing God leading, is that 8 to 10 years. The next question is: do you ever desire to be a senior pastor? If so, what is the timetable? I desire to preach. The rest of the senior pastor job I'm not too excited about. But after student ministry, when God leads us away from student ministry, I'd much rather be involved in college ministry of some kind, or even as a college professor. So that's kind of where I'm leaning after student ministry. So right now, there's no desire to be a senior pastor, and I'm not really working towards that type of position either. Next question: why are you willing to leave your current place of ministry? My wife and I have only been here for about a year, a little over a year actually, and we came on board a church that seemed to be growing really well, and it was. But the reality was is they weren't ready to bring on a second pastor. There was only one staff member at the time. They brought on me as a second pastor. The church wasn't ready for it. Both as a church body, they just weren't ready for the dynamics that would bring along, and they didn't really have a good definition of what the position was, and I should have been more prudent in asking questions in the interview process, honestly. But they also weren't ready financially. The church is losing some money pretty quickly, and the position will actually be unfunded in about 8 weeks. And my wife and I actually stepped down from the position before the church had to make some tough decisions. So my last Sunday is actually January 27th. So we will be unemployed at that time. We're actually going to be moving to my in-laws in Florida. We're going to live in the Orlando area while we conduct this job search and continue searching for God's leading. So we're stepping down because the church, frankly, wasn't ready for the position. The elders don't want to see us go. The pastor doesn't want to see us go. But they understand that this is what's best for our family, and ultimately what's going to be best for the church. The next question is: what do you consider to be wins in your ministry? Obviously, converts are a pretty big win, pretty objective win too. You can see a person that didn't know Christ and then come to know Christ. That's a pretty big win in ministry. Another one is when students answer a call to full-time vocational ministry. Not every student, not every person is called to vocational ministry, but some are. And I think a successful ministry is going to encourage that and also facilitate that and equip students to answer that call. And so when a student is faithful to God's leading and God's calling, that's always a huge win. And I also consider it a huge win when kids take initiative to serve in their local church, in their local community. When kids take the gifts that God has given them out into the world to impact the world for Christ, that's always a huge win, an exciting moment for any youth pastor, any youth director to experience. Next, what kind of tenure are you praying and looking for in your next ministry assignment? Uh, my wife said forever. We don't really enjoy moving that much. We definitely don't enjoy the job search process. But realistically, that 8 to 10 year time frame that we're looking at for student ministry, we want to be somewhere for 8 to 10 years. I think that provides a stability and a legacy for the ministry, and it also provides stability for our kids and for our family. And so we're looking for at least 8 to 10 years at this point. Next question: how do you handle change? I moved a lot growing up. I moved quite a bit from the West Coast, through the Midwest, and so I handle change pretty well. I'm pretty adaptable. I don't seek change just for the sake of change, but when it does happen, when change is necessary, I roll with the punches pretty well and welcome it because I know that God is leading in those changes. Next question is: do you consider yourself a personal soul winner? Are you frequently sharing your faith? I share my faith frequently in my position as a pastor, obviously from the teaching position or the pulpit, or also just one-on-one relationships with students and families, but also in my personal life. My wife and I have friends and family a lot who aren't believers, and we share our faith with them frequently. We pray for them frequently, and we've seen a number of family members and friends come to know Christ through our efforts to model Christ and to share Christ with them as well. And the last question is this: what kind of leader do you work best with? Now, I work great with a leader that equips me, that encourages me, and that trusts me to do the ministry that God has called me to, and also that encourages me to use the gifts God has given me to fulfill that calling into ministry. I work well when my gifts and my passions are encouraged, and the trust is given to fulfill God's call in that ministry with the gifts I've been given. That answers all those questions. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned a little bit about me. If you have more questions, feel free to shoot them my way. I have Ryan send me an email or give me a call. I'd be glad to answer them. My wife and I are excited about this possibility, excited about the position, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.